Michele lived in a super luxury apartment in Milan and barely remembered his grandfather's old plantation existed. His idea of fighting boredom was picking from a long list of women every night. But one afternoon, his second brother Carlo pushed him to finally take care of the family estate. Michele agreed, though he still had plans that night with 11 different women. Carlo told him there was no time to waste because their grandfather had just died. Michele, careless as ever, wanted to know why that mattered. Carlo laid it out plainly. This was their one chance to get even richer. They owned a lavish apartment, but they were still just employees at their father's company, always compared to their late eldest brother Giorgio. Their father praised Giorgio and only Giorgio. If they could sell the plantation, maybe their father would finally stop looking down on them. Michele decided it was a brilliant idea, and the two of them agreed to travel there the next day. Michele meant to visit his grandfather's casket at the church, but instead he ran into his childhood friend, Elisa. She froze at the sight of Michele and Carlo, since neither of them had come back to the village in years. When they walked in together, the whole village turned to stare, everyone except Carlo, whose attention was immediately pulled toward Giada, Elisa's younger sister. Elisa asked Michele what had brought him all the way back. Was it really just his grandfather? Michele smiled and told her he was tired of the glittering capital and only wanted to come home as an ordinary person, with no title, no position, and no wealth. Elisa laughed because she could not picture Michele ever surviving as a simple farmer. She did remind him of one thing. Her family had always been the servants at his grandfather's house and plantation. Michele assured her he remembered, since that house had been their childhood playground. What Elisa was really afraid of was that Michele might sell the house her family lived in, the one sitting on his grandfather's land. Everything starts here. This is no place to be single. Soon Carlo arrived with Elisa's mother and Giada, and once again Michele announced that he had come to live as an ordinary man. He even suggested he and Carlo stay at the grandfather's house. Elisa's mother and Giada could only shake their heads. Then a little girl named Linda ran up and called Elisa her mother. That was how Michele learned Elisa was a single mother. Since Michele and Carlo were the grandsons of the plantation owner, Elisa's family gave up their beds for the two guests. The next morning, Michele woke up to a house full of his grandfather's chickens and could barely shoo them out. Meanwhile, Elisa went to wake Linda and found her room empty. The girl had only just crept home after sneaking out all night. Because Michele had been just as mischievous as a boy, he covered for her. When Elisa was about to scold her, Michele claimed Linda had been up since early morning and had asked him to make her breakfast. Linda played along and pretended she already knew him well, thrilled when he showed her photos from his trips abroad. Elisa then invited Michele to look around the plantation. As they walked, she told him that ever since he and Carlo had gotten busy in the city, it was her family who had kept the whole place running. She did the hard work herself, tending the horses, chopping wood, running the tractor, even renovating the house. Hearing all this only convinced Michele that he should never reveal the real reason he had come. Still, he quietly gathered information. He asked what the plantation held, and Elisa told him 3 hectares of olive trees, 2 of vineyards, and 5 hectares of empty land. When she caught him writing it all down and asked why, he brushed it off. To distract her, Michele tried to fix the plantation's water system and only managed to soak them both. Elisa told him to change into her dry clothes, and he could not hide how beautiful he found his childhood friend. Once he finished counting up the assets, Michele warned Carlo that Giada must never find out their real plan, since Carlo clearly liked her. They had to stay quiet until the buyer arrived next month. To buy time and ease his own guilt, Michele offered to help Elisa with her work. She did not believe he could be useful and handed him a chicken and walked off, but he kept coming back until she let him try the rough labor of a farmhand. Used to soft chairs, Michele was overwhelmed. He never expected pretending to be a farmer would be this exhausting, and for the first time he understood how tired Elisa must have been running this land. Still, in his mind, it was all an act. Once the plantation sold, he would never have to work this hard again. Resting with Elisa, Michele said that if his eldest brother Giorgio were alive, he could have helped her too. Elisa told him Giorgio would be proud to see him becoming more independent. Then she gave Michele one last task in the wine cellar. She explained that ever since her father died 5 years earlier, she had struggled to provide for her family and her child, and Michele grew more impressed by her. Over a drink, Michele asked about Linda's father. Elisa admitted the man was just a tourist she had shared a single night with. Because she was only a farmer, he left, never knowing she was pregnant. Realizing how hard her life had been, Michele doubted he would have been that strong in her place. While Elisa could relax and talk with Michele, she said the opposite to Giada. She was sure Michele wanted something, because how could a millionaire's grandson truly want to be a farmer? But Giada could see the real reason behind her sister's suspicion. Elisa was simply too embarrassed to admit she was starting to like him. That night, Michele and Carlo invited the two sisters out to the market. Elisa pretended to refuse, then gave in, still unsure who Michele really was, but unable to hide how much she was drawn to him. Carlo and Giada grew closer too. The girl who had been so cold suddenly opened up, and Carlo, already deeply in love, promised he would do anything for her. Elisa drank too much, and Michele carried her back to her room, understanding she rarely got to let loose like this. The next morning, Linda woke Michele with an urgent question. She wanted to know if he liked her mother, because ever since he arrived, the two of them seemed closer and closer. In her innocent way, she admitted she would be happy if Michele became her father, since she had never known her real one and thought her mother might finally be happy. Michele was not sure, but he had an idea. He asked Linda which woman in the village Elisa hated the most. Linda named Amanda, the woman who always made Elisa jealous because so many men chased her. Michele decided he would test Elisa's feelings by inviting Amanda to dinner at the fanciest restaurant in Belvedere. Once the neighbors heard Michele wanted to date Amanda, Elisa suddenly seemed unwilling to be outdone. Of course, the dinner was never the real goal, so no matter how much Amanda flirted, Michele refused to take the bait. Then Elisa arrived, but not alone. She walked in on the arm of another man. Instead of jealousy, she gave Michele a rival to worry about. So Michele refused to back down. Convinced she had no real interest in the man, he made a show of eating Amanda's meatballs straight from her mouth. The stunt did not make Elisa jealous. She only leaned closer to her date. Frustrated, Michele asked Amanda who the man was. His name was Roberto, someone who had adored Elisa for years, though she had never given him a chance. By now, Amanda was fed up with Michele staring at Elisa all night, so she got up and walked out. Elisa tried to hide how pleased she was that nothing worked out between them. Humiliated, Michele grabbed a microphone and started singing on the stage, badly and completely off-key. He did not care about looking like a fool. He just could not stand the thought of Elisa leaving with another man. She immediately pulled him outside, asking why he was singing when he had once told her he would never sing unless he absolutely had to. Michele admitted he did it so he would not lose her, and he was certain she felt nothing for Roberto. If it was a real date, why did she keep staring at him all night? Before she could answer, the rain came pouring down. They took shelter in a barn, and Michele remembered how close Elisa had once been with Giorgio, while he could only admire her from a distance. Now he told her she was still beautiful, still independent and strong, and that was exactly why he wanted to stay longer. Elisa insisted she was not as perfect as he imagined. Michele told her she was perfect in the eyes of a man who could truly appreciate her, and that he had waited a long time for a moment alone like this. He was ready to spend the rest of his life with her. Elisa could not find the words, but Michele said none were needed because her eyes gave her away. That night the two of them stayed together. The happiness did not last. The next morning Michele finally came clean. His real reason for coming was to sell the plantation, which meant Elisa and her family would have to leave before the buyer arrived. But Elisa cut him off. She already knew everything. She knew he had been pretending, that he never wanted to be a farmer and never loved this place. On his very first night in her house, she had overheard his plan to sell. To her, he was just another millionaire who cared about nothing but money and never once thought about what would happen to her family. Michele insisted that was not true. He wanted to lift her into a better life once the plantation sold, so she would not have to farm forever. That only wounded her more, because it meant he was ashamed to be close to a farmer. She told him to leave at once, no goodbyes needed, and she added one final blow. He could tell his buyer not to bother coming because Giada had already convinced Carlo to call off the sale. Without Michele knowing, Elisa and Giada had been working together to win Carlo over, since if even one brother refused, there could be no deal. Michele did not mind the scheme, but he needed to know one thing. Was the night they shared also just part of the plan? Elisa answered with her own question, asking whether it had meant anything to him. He admitted his intentions had been wrong, but insisted that, to him, it had been something special. From the way she asked, though, it sounded like it meant nothing to her, so he walked away. Once he understood the full plan, Michele rushed to warn Carlo that Giada was only using him. He asked why a woman so cold at first would suddenly grow so close, and he told Carlo to stick with him and sell the land. But Carlo assumed his brother was just jealous and thought Michele should have been happy for him. Michele tried to explain there was more. From village gossip, he had learned Giada was another man's mistress, and at the market he had seen her heartbroken while the man she loved stayed with his wife. Carlo refused to believe any of it. Then a stranger came looking for Giada. Carlo did not know him, but the way the man looked at her left him uneasy, especially when he learned the two had known each other long before Carlo. The stranger called Giada the most beautiful woman in the city, the kind a man could never forget once he had been with her. That was enough for Carlo. He told Giada he knew she had only gotten close to him to keep the plantation, and that this man had to be her lover. She begged to explain, admitting her intentions started out wrong, but swearing her feelings changed once she fell for him. Carlo told her to stop lying and reminded her the plantation would be sold soon. After that failure, Giada apologized to Elisa for not holding Carlo back, but said they still had one final plan that could not fail. Elisa immediately refused. She was willing to leave as long as Linda's true identity stayed hidden from Michele's family. Their mother asked what she had been hiding. Not realizing Linda was standing nearby, Elisa revealed the secret. Linda was the rightful heir to this plantation, because Linda was Giorgio's daughter. That truth could keep them in the house, but Elisa was terrified of how Linda would react. Linda could not believe her mother had lied to her, and she refused to hear any explanation. She ran straight to Michele and told him she was his niece, that Giorgio was her father. She realized then that Elisa and Giada had always planned to use her identity to cancel the sale. Michele asked whether Giorgio had ever known about his child, and Elisa said with regret that he never knew a thing. Feeling betrayed, Linda decided she would never forgive her mother, and told Michele she would not lift a finger to stop the sale. From then on, she pulled closer to her uncles and pushed Giada and Elisa away, even saying that once the plantation sold, she would move to Milan with them. But Michele could not ignore Elisa. He apologized for the plan to sell, saying that if he had never come, Linda would never have been hurt. Elisa told him it was not his fault. She deserved to be cast aside, because Giorgio had thrown her away too the moment he learned she was carrying his child. The truth was, Giorgio had always known about Linda, but in front of the girl, Elisa could never admit he had deliberately abandoned them. If his family had learned the mother of his child was a poor farmer, Giorgio would have been disowned. That was why Elisa did not want to pull Michele too deeply into her life. Even so, he already knew what he needed to do. Elsewhere, Giada went to see Carlo one more time. She apologized for her lies and told him she was no longer in contact with the strange man. Her intentions may have started wrong, but she swore she never lied about her feelings and did not want to lose him. Carlo admitted he still loved her very much. The next day, the buyer arrived with Michele's father. He was shown every detail of the estate and asked to see the best view on the property. If everything checked out, he was ready to pay 26.5 million euros. Hearing that figure, the father was suddenly proud of Michele. But standing at the top of the hill, Michele said something no one expected. He told the buyer the surrounding hills were difficult to purchase unless the seller was completely honest, and that heavy rain often turned the plantation into a muddy, waterlogged swamp. Sensing something was off, Linda spoke up and said all of that was wrong, that the plantation was absolutely worth buying. Then Michele made his choice. He told the buyer he was no longer selling and suggested he look elsewhere. His father demanded to know what he was doing and said Giorgio would never have acted like this. Michele stood firm. He was not Giorgio, and he refused to let go of the happiness he had found here. Even if everyone called him a fool, he would not spend his life waking up too late to realize what mattered most. His father was not the only one disappointed. Linda could not understand why he called off the sale, and when Elisa found out, she gave a small smile and comforted the girl. Linda no longer knew where she stood. With the plantation staying, would her father's family still accept her? Elisa could not promise that, but she promised the one thing that was certain. She would accept Linda and stay by her side forever. As a mother far from perfect, she apologized for disappointing her, explaining she had only wanted to protect her, even willing to sacrifice her own happiness so Linda could have a better life. At last, Linda understood that her mother's whole world was her. With the plantation off the market, Elisa invited the whole village to a celebration. Carlo and Giada were there, now officially a couple. Elisa still could not understand why Michele had chosen not to sell, and she was surprised he had brought in his own employees to handle the work. Her mother told her he was off alone up on the hill. When Elisa found him, Michele was honest. His love for her was the real reason he called off the sale. His goal had been all about money, but the closer he got to her, the more he wanted to develop this plantation for the whole village, and he did not want Linda living far from her mother. Now that the land had passed to him, Michele proposed right there. He admitted he was not a perfect man, but only with Elisa could he become the person he truly wanted to be. One small nod from her was all the answer he needed. So the moral of the story is, if your genius plan starts with selling grandma's farm and ends with proposing marriage, maybe stop making plans and just listen to the chickens.